Hey everybody, what's up? It's JJ. Konnichiwa, what's up?
What's
So
up?
I'm here with a special guest today with Happi.
I'm very, very honored and very excited to be here with Gigi.
Happi is an amazing person with an amazing story, and let's hear a bit about it. Introduce yourself.
Okay, so I am Happi from the Asian Enthusiast, and I am currently learning Japanese, Chinese, and Korean. Ooh.
Whoa, three. Are you kind of learning them all at the same time?
So they all have very unique journeys with me. I started probably around 15 learning Japanese, and then I started learning Korean and Hangul and listening to like Korean music. Then I started making a bunch of Chinese friends. Became a Japanese and Chinese double major, but they also didn't have Korean at the university that I went to.
Oh wait, so you double majored in Japanese and Chinese at the time?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. So how did you first learn about Japanese when you were 15 though?
I am from the little Midwest of America where there's not
Okay.
very much Asian culture diversity and
Hmm.
diversity in general. So I didn't actually have any Asian culture or Asian students at the high school that I went to. But I made friends with some students that were getting into anime and manga. It was becoming popular at the time. K-pop still wasn't a thing. Anime like Death Note and Bleach was popular. And
Okay, you rode that second wave then.
yeah, that wave. I was learning a little bit of Japanese from watching the subs rather than the dubs, thankfully. But what really changed everything was the Kizuna project, which I participated in my sophomore year of high school. The Kizuna project was a 10-day Japanese government-funded exchange program where American high schoolers got to go to Japan for 10 days and experience Japanese cultures. I learned something very, very important during that trip.
Tell us.
Actual Japanese culture is much more interesting than anime. Yeah.
Interesting. I think a lot of people get into Japanese culture that way as well, right? I grew up and there was a Japanese family. I go see their children all the time. And I actually got into Japanese culture just because that family was so much different than our family. And by different, I just mean culturally very polite, very well mannered. When we ate, we had chopsticks. And just as a 6-year-old, 8 little kid, I'm like, where's the fork? Where's this, right? So they had to teach me everything from the bottom up.
Wow.
And just how polite their family was. The man's brother came from Japan and he heard I liked the video game Bomberman as a kid. And so he got me a Bomberman action figure from Japan. They never sold it in America, never sold it in Canada.
What?
And when I got that, I was like, this is the best present I ever got. And I only met this guy one time. Like, why did they give me this? And they were like, oh, it's because you played with our son. He said you were very nice to him. And when we came back from Japan, we heard you like Bomberman. So, and I was just so floored, right? Like Canada, America, no one would buy a present for someone for meeting them once, especially if it's not even their family's brother, right?
Yeah.
Then from that, of course, being 8 years old, I got into their manga and anime, but I mean, I didn't even read it because there was no English. I got into Dragon Ball before Dragon Ball became big. It was all Japanese. There was no subs they were showing me.
Back in the day.
And then when subs came out, it was like in a comic book store, and I was like, "Oh, I saw that. My Japanese friend showed me that." And then I got into fighting and martial arts, and that got me my main like I got to go to Japan. Actually, I hated anime once Dragon Ball got famous because I was like, man, I was watching that for 3 years. People didn't know what it was. They were making fun of me for liking it. Now it's the most popular show in the world, and I was like, hey, sorry, Dragon Ball.
That's honestly how I feel with K-pop. Because back in my day, like nobody knew what K-pop was. Had my little like Teen Top and Shiny merchandise. That was an entire generation that didn't really get very much publicity. But like after BTS, then everyone starts knowing what K-pop is. Whereas back in my day, that didn't exist.
Kara is like the oldest name I learned, and I learned about K-pop from Japan. I just remember Kara, and then that Taxi song got big in Japan, and that's how I was like, oh wow, Korea has some good music.
Taxi. That's SNSD. Next up.
Oh, okay. In Japan, you could not go anywhere without hearing kind of that. Who did you start with K-pop?
I started with You Kiss. I remember because I was first learning Japanese before Korean, one of the first songs that I learned that I was actually able to sing of a K-pop song was the Japanese version. And then
Oh, interesting.
my love for certain anime like series and K-pop actually helped me get along with the Chinese exchange students.
Oh, cool. Is K-pop popular in China too?
Yes, it was very, very popular. They really centered on their Chinese market, specifically with EXO. So EXO, they would have Korean versions of their songs, and they also would have Chinese versions. And then they had 5 members that were Chinese as well.
In a K-pop group, there was Chinese members?
Yes.
Back to you, Happi. So you got into Japanese, and then where did you go first? Did you go to Japan first or China?
I've definitely had a very interesting journey. So it started out as a Japanese and Chinese double major in the Midwest, and then Korean kind of on the side, but listening to a lot of Korean music. Then I got the opportunity as a sophomore to study abroad in Japan for a year. Before I went to Japan, I actually had 5 months of summer vacation. I got on a plane and I went over to China and independently traveled for 5 months.
So independent, you mean by yourself? No one?
Yeah, by myself. I had made a ton of Chinese friends at university and also at like different summer camps. So I had places to go stay with them for like a week or so. And they would introduce me to their hometown, to their friends, to their family, show me around their city. So I was just really taken care of, kind of like similar to your story, just the people and the kindness that really just brought me in to fall in love with their culture. And then I went and studied abroad in Japan. As a junior, I went back to China and studied abroad in Shanghai for a semester there. I've been kind of everywhere. After graduating, I moved to Hawaii for 2 years. And in Hawaii, I've been working on my Osaka dialect, also Cantonese, my Korean too. I want to learn Okinawan and like.
I always said that I wanted to learn Osaka, and then after Osaka, I wanted to learn Tohoku because it's such a different language than all of Japan.
What about
where Osaka is kind of like the cool, hip version. Or in Tokyo, they think it's like the urusai or annoying version, but I like it.
Or the koi.
The comedian language, basically. That's why I love it. I wrote this in my university was there's kind of a stereotyping with dialects in Japan. So the Kansai band is in the Kansai region is like the funny person. They're all the comedians. So if a person speaks Kansai band in a Japanese movie, he's the funny person. And then Tohoku is very Inaka or countryside. So if they speak Tohoku, many Japanese don't understand it. And so in movies, they're represented as like the idiot. When I heard that, I was like, wow, that's weird.
Yeah.
Very harsh. I had this goal at one point that, because I'm an actor, I wanted to speak Tohoku band and be the hero. And then speak the Hyojungo or the standard Japanese and be the idiot. And then, I don't know, still be funny with the Osaka band? I don't know. Is there stereotypes with Chinese dialect?
Oh, yes, definitely. And actually, for me, I've been able to express myself very differently depending on which accent or dialect I'm using in Chinese. The personality of a guy or a girl really changes based on the dialect because you have so much different like words to use, very different kind of atmosphere, different feeling. For example, the Dongbei or Tohoku dialect of China, it's going to be closer to Mandarin, but it really feels much more kind of like direct, funny, kind of like big, outgoing.
So it's very similar to Japan.
So it has this kind of like Osaka feel to it as well. The other thing though with Dongbei is that they're known for kind of up-talking themselves much further than they actually are.
Got the strut going on, kind of like that.
Yes, strut. You gotta have that strut.
I'm from Dongbei. I got $50, $50. Their black shirts with the top opened up with a gold chain that's not actually gold because that would be too expensive. We gotta say it's gold.
It's so wonderful. And so like a Dongbei girl, then if I'm wanting to kind of like tell it straight to somebody or like go off about something, I usually will use my Dongbei accent because that's the most easiest to be like angry in or to kind of just go off about something in.
Say something angry to me.
It's that feeling. It's just like,
and what did you say?
Oh my goodness, why are you even like thinking this, or why would you even say this? Yeah.
Okay. It felt like you were complimenting me in Bombay. Like you were saying, Osaka. I think it's changing a lot now, but people from Osaka, guys could date girls from Tokyo, but then girls would not date guys from Tokyo if they're from Osaka. They would have to date inside Kansai because the Kansai bend or the Kansai dialect is very masculine, especially Osaka. The way that they roll their R's, the way that they talk, it's just so masculine. And then when you go to Kyoto or Tokyo, it's downplayed because it seemed as rude or too rough. What is a man or what is a woman is always being changed now in the West. And that's another story because I wasn't there when all that happened. But before, that was a man, that was a girl, right?
I came back and now everything's changed. Like, it's literally what it feels like for the West. Like, but
yeah. No, I was the same way.
For me, living in Japan, in Tokyo specifically, my everything changed, right? So I basically immersed and really took on all aspects of what's expected as being a woman in Tokyo, and kind of like what's feminine and femininity in Tokyo. So then when I returned to the Midwest, I was appalled and I had no idea what was going on. Like, I was like, what are people wearing? How is this okay? What is going on here? I was so scared. Like, it just freaked me out. And then just that reverse culture shock was really big. And so I would say even now, living in Hawaii is a totally different culture than mainland America. Everything that I am and who I am is much more invested in Asian culture than Western culture at all. Whereas you seem to have this beautiful balance kind of the two.
Do I? I don't know. I don't know who I am anymore. I try to stand up for good rights of all human beings, and I get labeled a disgrace to my race. I do fit inside Japan, and I don't. And I do fit in Canada, and I don't. It's weird. It's like when I was joking, making a lot of my comedy in the beginning in Canada, people were like, I kind of don't get it, blah, blah, blah. When I showed my friends and my family Japanese comedy, they don't get it. And then when I brought that humor to Japan, it just clicked. And it was so easy for me to meet Japanese friends. I mean, when I went to university, all the foreigners ate. You get in a little circle. Right away, I was like, no, I'm going out. And I started eating with Japanese. I didn't speak that good at Japanese at the time. They were kind of like, no problem. Can I sit here and eat? And they're like, oh, yeah. And I would try to talk to them. And then, bam, I just started clicking. In less than 1 month in Japan, I was in a Japanese circle. And all the foreigners hated me because they're like, I'm betraying them. I know. But I was in this circle with just Japanese. I think one Chinese girl, but she lived in Japan. And I was watching Japanese TV shows. I was eating like home-cooked meals with them every day. And I experienced Japan in that first year. We have just so much to talk about, and really I just want all the viewers to kind of send us in some questions of what we want to talk. We also want to talk about comedy, but I feel like that's a whole separate video because she has some clips about Chinese comedy, and I'd like to dive into Chinese comedy versus Japanese comedy. And I'm going to be doing another video with Korean comedy versus Japanese comedy. So there's just so much to talk about, and we could go for 5 hours, but we're not. But lastly, because we're getting a little more of a feeling about you, Happi, and your journey and everything. How do you study 3 languages at once? Like, I've been in Japan 10 years. I'm studying Japanese. It's so hard to just sit down. I give myself 1 hour before. I was doing 2 hours, and it just doesn't stick in my head. Yeah. So, and that's 1 language. So how are you getting 3 languages? I see her speak Chinese and Japanese, and it sounds so fluent. And you speak some Korean too. So, like, you would imagine that you'd want to separate them, right? Study Japanese first, then study Chinese, then study Korean, but you're studying all 3 at the same time?
Yeah, and I actually use Japanese and Chinese to help me with learning Korean,
So, but Korean and Japanese are very similar, so wouldn't you want to study Japanese and Korean together?
I actually learned Hangul very early on, so the writing, like the characters of Korean, so I would use that to be able to kind of sing karaoke, and being able to like read along with lyrics as well, because Korean was mainly used to be able to sing, because I didn't have that many Koreans around me. But then when I was in university, there were many opportunities to use Japanese and tons of opportunities to use Chinese. Korean wasn't as much of a communication tool at the beginning until I actually moved to Hawaii. And in Hawaii, I was an international student specialist for mainly Korean groups and also some Japanese and Chinese groups. So conversationally, I already was able to talk like very comfortably in Japanese and Chinese, especially because of my like studies abroad. But it was really only in Hawaii in those past 2 years when Korean started becoming a conversational tool. for being able to learn by yourself, you have to really find something that you're passionate about. And I would say lyrics. Lyrics and songs are things that I'm very passionate about. And I have just recently been learning a lot of Yonezu Kenshi songs.
Okay.
You know Yonezu Kenshi, right?
No.
So he sang Demon.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So he has amazing songs. Studying those lyrics, I've been able to learn a ton of new vocabulary. Because the thing with learning conversational Japanese, especially in the Tokyo situation, is that conversation doesn't get that deep. So there's not very much words that you get to learn outside of very basic subjects like the weather and food, like bread.
When I first started learning Japanese, it was my teacher in university that played their CD, and I fell in love with it right away. Udafu's, one of my favorite Japanese bands. I went to their concert. I'm a metal guy, I'm a rock guy, but when I heard that J-pop, all of a sudden I felt happy. And every time I hear one of their songs, I just get happy. Very different, right? You hear a heavy song, you're like, yeah, I'm pissed off today. I'm going to get more pissed off. But you hear a happy song and your whole mood changes to happy, then it's a good thing. I found out I liked all their songs. And at first I didn't know what they meant in Japanese, so I used it to study Japanese like you. Wow. And I got what my Japanese friends were calling Udafu's Japanese. So Japanese based on that and comedy. So I ended up having really funny conversations. What I found was a lot of these lyrics and words that you hear in music, whether it be English, right? Like I'm gonna or wanna, it's not proper English. And then if you have someone like Taylor Swift, shake it off, shake it off. Yeah, we say I'm just gonna shake it off, but we don't really use it that much in conversation.
Yeah.
Like kamahen in Japanese as well. Like Dragon Ball, that heno heno kappa was one. Heno heno kappa. And I love that because it meant piece of cake. So whenever a Japanese friend came up and like, oh, can you help me with this? I was like, heno heno kappa. And they'd be like, that's not how it's used. We don't say it. And I was like, I was baffled by it because I was like, but if I say it, you understand what it means, right? Like, oh yeah, heno heno kappa. They're like, yeah, it's tsujiru. We understand it.
Yeah.
But we don't say it. It's not spoken word.
Yeah. And I love that. Like you get to kind of personalize your own language ability around what you're interested in.
Like if you're talking with friends, that Japanese is cool. But if you're going in a business interview or like when you're auditioning like me, probably not the best.
I would definitely not have learned Keigo, Sonkeigo, or Kenjogo had I not specifically had those classes in Japanese.
Korean, you do mostly lyrical based studies, right?
Yeah, I took Korean classes in Japan and in China. Wow. So that's also
you did a lot of schooling to get that good then.
Well, I did do a lot of schooling, but I have really lost a lot of what I learned in school because I wasn't using it in actual practice. But I would say that conversationally, I've gotten really comfortable being able to talk about different subjects. With Chinese, I'm able to express myself like very easily, and with Japanese as well. With Korean, not so much yet, but I can sing about everything basically.
I can just converse in singing. How are you today? But see, that's really cool. And I think people are very interested in doing that. And that's one way I always tell people as well. If you want to study a new language, it has to be with something you're interested in, whether it's music, whether it's movie, whatever it's this. Japanese people ask me all the time, how do I study English? And it's like, do you want to study English? If you don't, you're not gonna. Or it's going to be very difficult for you. And if you do want to study it, what do you like? Do you like movies? Do you like music? Do you like this? Study it with that. Yeah. So that's kind of cool hearing you kind of have the same kind of wavelength on that. But I think we're running out of time. So we're going to leave this video at this. And the main thing I wanted to talk about is Chinese comedy, Japanese comedy. Happi also did a little bit of comedy, so I want to hear her stories as well with that. So we're going to prepare you a really good video next time. Yeah. But for now, let's end there.
Thank you guys so much. And if you would like to check out some of my different content in Japanese, Chinese, Korean, and then sometimes English, I also have my YouTube channel. So you can check me out at The Asian Enthusiast here. And Happi!
Do you have like a Tai Chi channel too?
I also love dancing too. No, I definitely do that. I'm very animated.
Actually, I saw one of your videos on Instagram. You're doing K-pop. That's insane.
Yeah.
I want to learn dancing, actually. I'd love to learn some K-pop moves. That would be a funny video too. You teaching me to K-pop dance.
Yes. Oh, bro, we going
Let's
old
do it.
school
Let's do it.
too. I'm totally going to teach you old school kind. Yes.
Old school.
Yes. I'm excited. But yes, no, this is going to be so
Well,
much
that'll
fun.
be another video.
Yes.
JJ
So
learns to K-pop dance.
Yes.
I think I can idol dance and I can do this one.
What's that?
But yeah. Okay, so see you guys next time. Thanks for watching. ほなまたな。
またね